Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's a good day. It's Tuesday, February 26, 2013, and this is Day 9 Daily number 560, where we learn to be a better game. I don't know how I left the off of that, given that I say it every day. Whatever. I have a story to tell you. But first, what's happening today? In today's daily, many Terran players are exploiting how strong the hellbats, reapers, marines, hellions, all the things that can be thrown at Zerg early, Terrans are throwing at Zerg, and Zerg are struggling quite a bit. Blizzard has publicly stated, Ermagerd, we have attention to this. We want to try to get a fix so that Zerg can, in fact, have an easier time in the early game. So, in fact, I'm going to use that future change as the basis for today's daily. Given that Blizzard has a high likelihood of throwing out or at least giving Zerg some opportunities to hold off these, doing some rebalancing in the early game, a reasonable question remains. Since we're going to late game, and Zerg is looking very strong with fast Mutalisks, Vipers, Ultralisks being really powerful, how are we as Terran to transition from the opening to the late game? We'll be looking at that in today's daily by analyzing Polt's replays against his ex-teammate TSL Hyun. Woo! Thank you. So we'll look at the idea of how the opening with the new units sets us up well to do stuff in the late game. More on that in a bit. Today we have a daily, as we do tomorrow and Thursday and Friday. I'm playing Magic the Gathering Gatecrash drafts all day. Episode 3 of Why We Like It with my best friend Tristan recently went up, so you can watch our analysis of the graphic novel Watchmen. That's up on day9.tv. Next week, even though the beta is down, have no fear, because there will be 4 days in a row of the King of the Beta Round of 8 and semifinal matches, which will conclude in 2 weeks from yesterday at the Heart of the Swarm community launch party hosted by Day 9 and Team Liquid. We opened up the tickets for that today, and they sold out in 3 minutes. I shouldn't say tickets because it's $0. There's actually zero money needed for you to attend, but the seats are all gone, so I don't even know why I said it. Let me talk a little bit about the day that I had. So I'm like waking up, I'm trying to make sure that everything's in order for the community launch party. There's a lot of logistics, a lot of moving of things from A to B and plugging into walls. And I want to make sure that all the walls are available to be plugged into because I'm a boss. And one of the big things that's important is that I have to do pre-recordings of all the King of the Beta games before the beta goes down on Friday. So I was like, all right, cool. I can do this. I have a ton of recording to do and 3 days to do it. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm going to try to knock out a bunch today. So I started the recording of the first series, the first game, and I didn't like the intro, so I started over. I was like, all right, this is pre-recorded. It has to sound good. And I start again, and I messed up, and I was like, no, I want to make sure that I reward that properly, and I started again. I did this like 5 times, and I was like, screw this, man. I'm just going to nail it in one shot. And I hit go, and it was pretty good. It's like a solid 7 out of 10. Not amazing, not bad, but like pretty good. And then I look and realize that I streamed the whole damn game on my channel this afternoon. But, so having made a complete butt bag of myself, I turned it off. So some of you may have seen the game number 1. Gairdro in the chat saw it. He's been saying jokes to me all pre-chat long. It was an excellent game. It will be the first game showcased on Monday during the usual Fun Day Monday slot. Cats versus White Raw. Fantastic. No spoiling. Ugh. I want to talk a little bit about what I was talking about earlier. Now, here is something that I think is wrong. Let me talk about wrongness. Let me talk about something that will upset me if you do this. If you think that something should be patched, so you play as though it will be, that kind of like, ooh, that hurts me. because you don't know if it'll be patched, right? For a very, 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 very long freaking time. Well, I should say, way back in the beta of Wings of Liberty, people said the Colossus was just too good a unit. And it would definitely get a range nerf, a damage nerf, all that. It just never happened. The Colossus stayed the Colossus. So a lot of people who were saying, yeah, I'm just going to play in a way, I'm going to go to Zergling heavy because I know the Colossus will be removed. They got bonered. And that's it. We don't even involve Amanda in the whole process. So, this is very particular and a little bit different. In this circumstance, Blizzard has said Zergs are seeming to struggle against Terran early game, and we're absolutely aware of this. We're looking into it, and we're going to begin slowly implementing changes that we think will solve that one specific problem. So, many Terrans are indulging in the moment and just going mass hellbat drops and ruining Zerg's day. Polt does not do that. In fact, he doesn't even do any sort of hellbat-based opening. But what Polt does do is use some of the new units in Terran vs. Zerg for new openings. So what we're going to do in today's daily is we're going to look at this idea of, let's assume that all the hellbat, Widow, Mine, Reaper craziness will get adjusted in some way so that Terrans have to go to the late game. How do we go from our early game to our late game, making sure that we haven't screwed ourselves in some way? Which is why I have to bring up the definitive graph of Terran vs. Zerg and Wings of Liberty, which is why I think it is an oh-so important thing. We're not going to look at this too long. Basically, this is the amount of time in the game in minutes, is the amount of pressure that the player can bring up. And generally, right around the 14-minute mark is where all the interesting stuff happens, where Zerg is teching to Hive, but doesn't have Hive tech yet. There's a couple more things that can be thrown in, you know, like Roach Hydra and all that stuff, but most importantly, it's the 14-minute mark where there's Infestors but no Hive tech. Whether we want to do a standard Terran play and hit with 2-2 right during this period, or whether we're trying to do some Marauder aggression and mess them up long before that time even occurs. That is a significant thing to note. So let's go ahead and begin watching this game. This was another game from the good studio King of the Hill, casted by Diapollo and Adebisi. Definitely go check them out at twitch.tv/thegdstudio for the actual vodcast. We're going to be doing the analysis of this and likely the second game. So let's go through this opening and make sure we understand why we're doing what we're doing and also the pitfalls to avoid. Plus button, stepping on in. Dat good old plus button. Okay, cool. The throwing down of the depots, the usual sort of things. I'll just note that some of the notable formations, difficult to secure fourth base for Terran, because it's easy to creep this up, it's easy to creep this up. We want to expand here if we're intending on being more aggressive towards this base. We want to expand here as a fourth if we're intending on being more aggressive as this base, or against this base. This is obviously our third. I don't think there's any question about that. The only time where we would take this in our third is likely in Terran vs. Protoss if we're playing kind of like Bomber, hyper-aggressive. So let's look at Polt right away. Bam! He's going for an early expand. Oh yeah. Seems reasonable. There are some weird Roach burrow rushes. Actually, let me just throw this out there right now. You know those old Roach timings where you get like 6-7 roaches and try to hit them real early? They're actually a real pain in the ass to deal with if you get burrow with roaches. So you can just back off and burrow, and Terran's contained in their healing, and you can unburrow and do that. I'm not going to suggest you do some sort of nutty all-ins, but the new all-ins are there. Who doesn't love an all-in? Right, bit by bit? Who doesn't? I certainly don't. Day 9? So, okay, we're seeing this barracks go down now. We're seeing that around the time. I'm actually going to note this scout timing because it's very significant. So here we are. Barracks going down. One geyser going down, and our 16th SCV gets sent out. Now, I say this all the time. Don't scout if there's no reason to. Specifically, don't scout unless you're looking for a specific thing. Such as, damn, I've been playing a lot of Terran vs. Zergs and I keep losing to that really fast expand, fast speed Zergling build that Startail Life does. Ugh. Startail Life murdered a ton of Terrans for a long time doing this. But I don't want to stop doing my early expand. I don't want to stop doing my early Hellion play. What to do? What to do? What to do? Boopy-doo. So let's go ahead and note this scout. Everything going on in the Terran base, I'm going to briefly avoid. We'll come back to that in a moment. But I want you to note this very nice scout timing. Arrives first to see the wobbling on the hatch. Great. We know that he went early expand, fast 2 queen. We can see the wobbling right there. And notice that if we had arrived earlier, we would have actually not had that information. There would have been no wobbliness. But most significantly, we can go in here and we can see no gas geysers. If he had gone for the 17 gas geyser, we could then click on the gas geyser and get a count of the gas remaining. And see exactly what our Zerg opponent was up to. If it was a new gas or whether it was indeed that annoying timing. Excellent. Excellent. So, we've gotten our scout timing absolutely done perfectly. This is amazing. Just really nice timing. And of course this can be done via adjustment. But I always like that Polt aligns it really nicely. Always. Polt's really, really good at these sorts of things. So great. We now know everything that we need to know. And then he just gets right on out. No sending in of the SCV and running in circles and running in circles and running in circles and running in circles. Just in once, out once. Okay, cool. So, refinery, doing this sort of mining thing.
Upgrade our SCV.
So we're going to start seeing a little bit of an addition of some new units. Here's the factory, planting down. Not too much gas being taken early on. Our SCV did hook up to scout for a 3rd base.
Our SCVs are under attack.
And it'll die, but that's okay. Or will it? Still okay if it ends up dying. So here is the first moment where we end up seeing an actual deviation from the times of past. Why is this such a smart move? Ordinarily, what we do is we go ahead and throw down our... Oops, I lost my mouse. We throw down our reactor, we get the double Hellion. But now, just note, why is this possible? Why is this good? Well, obviously, he doesn't have Ling speed. He's likely to be taking a 3rd base with creep queens. So without speedlings, I'm just going to have this Reaper, and I'm just going to really lock down. It's pretty straightforward. Pretty good, pretty straightforward. Since we can't begin the double Hellion production right away, obviously because our barracks is sort of in use right now, Polt just goes ahead and begins the mine, and then Delay begins producing the reactors. Oh, yes. Now, this structure I'm sure many of you have seen before, which is use some fast units to keep the Zerg hold on up while we get a fast command center. Very straightforward. Really nice. Basics. Goody goodness. But the Widow Mine, I think, is a really interesting addition. And look at this nice timing. We're going to construct a second Widow Mine. And you notice this Widow Mine finishes in 37 seconds. This reactor finishes in 37 seconds. Oh, not only is it the basic logic that we have good on Polt's end, it's the timing. Or as we would call it in Korean, Ihan timing! So now Polt, since he knows he's going to be up against slowlings, can just sort of monitor what's up. We'll tragically lose focus, lose this, but still, all the overall basics are still there. Scouting, checking out what's up, controlling the map. And we can actually begin getting a little bit aggressive with these Widow Mines right away. Why is that? Because we saw, in the early game, we saw no gas. There's no way he can have a layer. There's no way he can actually even really have that much here. In fact, that's what he has there. And we see Hyun is aggressively trying to spread creep all the way up there. So how did we traditionally apply pressure? We would apply it with Hellions, which are easily swatted aside with the range 5 Queens. We would eventually get Banshees, which are easily swatted aside by the range 7 Queens. Oh. I will note that, again, a critical misclick ends up happening. Polt loses focus and burrows it late, and it doesn't go down. Okay, so we've had 2 misclicks, one here, another misclick, one here. But I still want you to note, how horrifying is this as a Zerg player? To be getting ready to expand, and all of a sudden, not only is there a Widow Mine here, but we don't even have any way to detect it, because we have not begun building our layer. We've actually only just mined a little bit of gas from here and a little bit of gas from there. We have 36 gas mined total. We'll actually probably have to build a Spore Crawler and waltz it on over there. This is excellent. This is not only good logic-wise, we don't have any speed Zerglings coming at us, so the Widow Mines are going to be a lot stronger. But also in terms of aggression. Nicely timed aggression with the Widow Mine. So now we have the Widow Mine number 2 coming out. But there's a moment where I actually want to just halt. I actually want to be like, whoa, and freeze the game. No amount of aggression early matters unless you have a good follow-up for the late turn. It just doesn't at all. It's weak. It's terrible. It's embarrassing. And I think this is the most common thing that happens whenever there's a new style that emerges or a new little tactic that people realize. I will take the hellbat drops as an example because the ways that we see people do hellbat drops are hilarious. They'll start off and they'll go hellbat medevac, and they'll follow it up by building more hellbats and more medevacs and continuing to go hellbat medevac. And then once the Zerg holds it off, the Terran's like, oh, guess I have to build units. Polt is sort of preempting this in the usual ways, getting the double engineering bay for the double upgrades. These are very early double engineering bays before 7 minutes. Starport coming up, not in the ultra-fast way that we would utilize to get a Banshee up, but in a more sort of traditional delay for some sort of harassment. So coming out of this, some nice little micro bits. We actually see extended Widow Mine production out of Polt. We see a reactor coming up out of the barracks. We see a starport. What is it going to build? Unlikely to be Banshees. Because, I mean, Banshee Widow Mine actually just kind of sounds silly. So I'll burrow the Widow Mine and it will kill everything. And then the Banshee will also be there, nearby, trying to kill everything. Think about it.
Complete.
With this sort of structure, with instead of building Hellions but building the Widow Mines take a little longer to build, so that means we'll have a little bit more excess cash. More notably, though, we'll be spending the gas, so we can't actually afford the Banshees. Something cheaper. The Viking. We have more control of the space of the map because of the Widow Mine and theoretically a Reaper that's been busy around the map. Continued monitoring of these control points. It's not the aggression of... It's not the aggression that we would normally think about when we think of something like Hellion Banshee, like really getting in the face, but this still is a nice control build versus someone who didn't open up with early gas. Again, Polt has not seen the early gas. Now, in terms of this follow-up, we've been delaying production of tanks, but we have excess minerals, because again, 75 minerals and a longer build time versus 100 minerals and a shorter build time. So Polt is actually able to build 4 barracks quite early to begin this production, which is fantastic. I want to state the generalization, and then I want to state the specific example. If you have an opening, a Oh god, I lost my train of thought of exactly how I wanted to say it. Let's straighten this bad boy up. Ugh. Ugh. Okay, here we go. Here's a generalization. We have to make sure that our opening is good. What the fuck? That's the worst start ever. Alright, third attempt. Coming up. Let's drink some water. An opening is not good unless it transitions well into the mid and late game. Let's get a little more specific. Our opening, for whatever damage it does or tactics it provides for, resource-wise, should set us up for the mid and late game. Resource-wise is the important one. So I'm going to come back here and just note the important tidbits of this. Oops, pulled back too much. Let's go to the 8-minute mark. Constructing widow mines is some gas and not very much minerals. And it buys us time. How are we setting ourselves up for the mid game? Getting upgrades for these, and then because we're going to have leftover minerals, we transition into a lot of barracks. Resource-wise, many people know that tank, medevac, marines, all critical components. Some builds, it's smarter to go tank first. Why? Because we think about the resources that we're spending. Other builds, like this one, we're spending our gas on widow mines. We have lots of minerals left over. What do we spend it on? Barracks. I'll do a different one. Bomber is spending almost no gas on anything in the opening. Hellions, third command center, marines out of a reactored barracks. How does he spend his gas? On tanks. That sure transitions well into the mid and late game, because if we start tank production early, we're going to get a good amount of tanks later, but it's still about the resources. It's that interaction that is the important one. Yeah, interactions. So Polt has set himself up very nicely. He's going for these mines. Whatever the mines do, that's great. Mines are hard to mess up when your opponent can't detect because his layer is not even close to being done. All right, I don't care what they do. What I really care about is this resource distribution. Look at this. Polt still has a ton of money up in the bank. Could easily actually begin adding on a couple more barracks at this point in time. And in fact is getting a fourth command center. Now, I don't care specifically too much for this fourth command center. This is kind of what I would describe as a found command center, like a, oh, all right, look at all this money in the command center. I would probably prefer to just get 2 more barracks and to begin to make tanks, something like that, to doing something like this. Because I like to have big mid games. I like to have strong, muscular mid games. So, with that in mind, we've wrapped up part 1, and we've seen an opening that has some big potential. The Reaper to control space, because we saw no speed links. The timing of this Widow Mine push to go to the 3rd of Zerg, very juicy. Both of them misclicked, totally fine. Because remember, good builds are not about having absolute perfection at the front line. Good builds are about having absolute perfection in what's going on back at the base. We obviously want to maximize use out of those units. Sometimes it'll work well, sometimes it won't, but we always have control over what we're doing back home with our buildings. When we come back, we're going to go to the mid-game of this game. Intuition. Intuition. Intuition.